So everybody wants that secret sauce, right? That
Yeah.
recipe for wealth and happiness.
It's $1 million question for sure.
And today, we're diving deep into the Almanack of Naval Ravikant to see if his wisdom can, help point us in the right direction.
Naval Ravikant, now there's a guy who doesn't mince words. A real straight shooter. He's got this knack for cutting through the noise and getting right to the heart of the matter, these big questions we all have.
He really does. He's like, what would you call him? The wise sage of Silicon Valley, sharing these really interesting insights in those epic tweet storms he's famous for. And of course, those podcasts, the ones I'm talking about.
Definitely. And the Almanack, it's like he distilled all that wisdom, all those golden nuggets into this one book.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
perfect for this kind of deep dive. And don't think this is just for the techies out there either. This is for anyone, really, who wants to design a life of, well, wealth and meaning, whatever that looks like for them. It's about taking control, right?
Absolutely. And he doesn't beat around the bush either. He starts right off by, well, he kind of redefines wealth. Forget those images of piles of cash, Naval's talking about something different, building assets, the kind that generate income even while you sleep.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Who doesn't want their money working harder than they do? But how do we make that happen? That's where I think a lot of people get stuck,
Yeah, it's not about winning the lottery or stumbling onto some get-rich-quick scheme. That's not what Naval's about at all. He's really big on this idea of specific knowledge. It's basically the opposite of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay, specific knowledge. So you're saying the key to wealth is finding this specific knowledge thing, but how do I actually figure out what mine is? What if I'm good at a lot of things or haven't found that one thing yet,
It's kind of about finding that unique intersection between what you're naturally drawn to, the stuff you're good at, maybe even effortlessly good at, and what other people haven't quite figured out yet.
So it's not about being the absolute best in the world at something, but finding that niche where your skills and passions, they kind of meet a real need in the market.
Exactly. It's like, how should I put it? It's like finding that hidden talent, that thing you do that others might see as a superpower. Even if it seems obvious or simple to you, they're impressed. For Naval, it was this unique blend of sales skills, his very analytical mind, and this incredible ability to break down complex information, make it simple.
Wow.
Skills that came naturally to him, but turned out to be, well, incredibly valuable in the business world.
It makes you wonder, what's my hidden talent? What do I do that seems easy to me but others might struggle with?
Right, that's the question, isn't it? And here's where it gets even more interesting. Naval argues that this specific knowledge, it isn't always something you learn in a classroom. It often comes from combining your interests in a way that just, it creates value that nobody's even thought of before.
It's like you're forging your own path, not just following the traditional route. Right?
Yeah. Like, imagine becoming a master Lego builder and somehow turning that into a six-figure business.
Exactly.
And he sees the internet as this, this incredible tool for this. It's leveled the playing field. Anyone, anywhere can connect with a global audience, build a platform around their specific knowledge, no matter how niche it might seem.
Okay, so I find my specific knowledge, build a business around it, and boom, instant millionaire. Just like that.
Well, hold your horses. It's not quite that simple. Naval's big on this idea of accountability. He says you have to be willing to put your name on the line, take some risks, and own the outcomes, both good and bad.
Hold on. Are you saying that I should, actively seek out ways to fail publicly? That seems a little counterintuitive.
Not quite seeking out failure, but definitely embracing the possibility of it. Naval's point is that society, at the end of the day, it rewards those who take ownership. When you're accountable, people are more likely to trust you, right? Invest in you, support you. He even talks about how some folks, they actually warned him against publicly sharing his thoughts on philosophy and personal growth alongside his business ideas.
Really? They thought he was, jeopardizing his image?
Really?
He needed to stick to the traditional safe image of a tech investor.
Exactly. But he was willing to be vulnerable, let people see the full picture of who he was. And you know what? That authenticity, it only strengthened his reputation. People respected that, expanded his influence. He embraced that potential downside, and it really did pay off for him.
So specific knowledge helps you identify what makes you valuable, what makes you stand out, and accountability is about stepping up and owning it, even if it means taking a chance, taking risk. But what about getting that value out there? Turning it into actual wealth. How does that work?
That, my friend, is where leverage comes in. It's like the secret ingredient that can really, truly amplify your efforts and, supercharge your results. Naval has this great quote. He says, "Fortunes require leverage."
Leverage, the classic game changer. But we're not just talking about money here, right?
Well, money or capital, it's definitely a form of leverage. But Naval talks about how labor, other people working for you, that's another form, but maybe not the most effective or fulfilling one in the long run. He's more interested in what he calls permissionless leverage, the kind of leverage that, well, technology makes possible.
Okay, so this is where coding and apps and all those online platforms come in, right? That kind of thing.
Bingo. You write a piece of code once and it works for you, like 24/7, reaching a global audience. No gatekeepers, no asking for permission. Same with creating content online, whether it's a blog post, video, or even a song. These things can generate income for years, decades even, long after you've created them.
It's incredible when you think about it, the gift that keeps on giving, as they say.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, leverage, no matter how powerful, is only as good as your judgment.
It's like having a Ferrari, but not knowing how to drive. You're not going to win any races that way.
Nailed it. You need to know which opportunities to seize, which risks are actually worth taking, and how to navigate the complexities of the market. And that's where judgment becomes absolutely paramount.
Don't chase every shiny object, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Develop your ability to make, well, smart, informed decisions.
You got it.
And that's what will determine your long-term success, not just some, fly-by-night scheme.
He argues that good judgment, it comes from experience, from making mistakes and learning from them, and from, building a strong foundation of knowledge.
Okay, so knowledge.
Yeah.
What kind are we talking about here? Should I brush up on my ancient philosophy or something?
It's not really about memorizing philosophical texts, though Naval's a big advocate for reading widely, for sure. He stresses practical skills, things like, understanding basic economics, psychology, even game theory.
It's about, combining intellectual curiosity with a solid understanding of how the world works.
Yeah. These foundational skills, they become sharper with experience, and that's what sharpens your judgment. That's how you can leverage your specific knowledge for, maximum impact.
Okay, I'm with you on that. But here's a question.
Mhm.
What about good old-fashioned hard work? Where does that fit into Naval's, philosophy?
That's where his thinking might surprise you. He's not against hard work, not at all. But he believes that in today's world, who you work with and what you work on are far more critical than simply clocking in endless hours.
It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Exactly. Being strategic with your time and energy, focusing on things that actually leverage your specific knowledge and contribute to those long-term goals, not just spinning your wheels.
Now, that's something I can get behind. So instead of, glorifying the hustle, it's about being intentional with our energy.
Yeah.
It's almost like that saying, work smarter, not harder. But how do you actually, make that shift in mindset?
Naval has a rather interesting suggestion for this. He recommends setting, get this, an aspirational hourly rate for yourself. And I'm talking about a rate that might seem, well, ridiculously high right now.
Wait, I should be charging a CEO salary for my time, even if I'm just starting out.
It's a mental trick, sure, but it's a good one. When you value your time highly, he used $5,000 an hour as his own benchmark, it forces you to prioritize high-impact tasks,
Right.
delegate or eliminate those low-value activities that suck up your time. You become laser-focused on making every single minute count.
Okay, I have to admit, I kind of love that. It's a total mindset shift. From how many hours can I squeeze into a day to how can I make every hour count towards my goals?
Exactly. And by focusing on work that aligns with that aspirational rate and leverages your specific knowledge, you naturally gravitate towards things that are, both fulfilling and financially rewarding. It's a win-win, really.
I like it. Okay, this is all making sense, but let's get real for a second. How do I actually find that sweet spot? The one where specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage all line up. Naval's journey is inspiring and all, but his path seems so unique. How does this apply to someone who's just starting out?
Well, that's where the long game comes in. Naval's a big, big believer in the power of building strong relationships.
The long game, huh? Not exactly a quick fix, but I'm sensing this is where those, the compounded returns come in.
You know it. He talks about how this principle of compounding, we usually apply it to financial investments, right? But it's just as relevant in building those relationships. By consistently nurturing genuine connections, offering value to your network, and prioritizing the long term, you're creating this powerful, powerful foundation for success.
It's like investing in, social capital, The more you cultivate those authentic relationships, the more opportunities will just kind of present themselves.
And it's not just about what you get out of those relationships either. Naval's big on generosity, on paying it forward, helping others succeed without expecting anything in return. That creates a cycle of abundance that benefits everyone.
What goes around comes around, as they say. But in this case, it's about building a network of, mutual support, shared success.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Naval believes that by consistently delivering value, showing up for others, and playing the long game in those relationships, you actually create what on the surface might look like luck.
Deterministic luck. So it's not about chance encounters or random opportunities. It's about positioning yourself to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. Because you've built that foundation of trust and mutual support.
You got it. He uses this analogy in the book. He talks about a diver who's become so skilled at finding treasure that treasure hunters actively seek him out, offering a share of their bounty just to have him on the team.
So you become so good at what you do, so well connected in your field, that opportunities they just fall into your lap.
Exactly. And he argues this luck, it's not random at all. It's cultivated through hard work, through integrity, and a commitment to building that reputation, for being someone who delivers value and can be trusted for the long haul.
So it's not just about being in the right place at the right time, but about becoming that go-to person, the one everyone wants on their team, because they know you're in it for the long game.
Exactly. And by nurturing those strong relationships, by consistently providing value and becoming known for your integrity, for your sound judgment, you create this cycle where opportunity, what some might call luck, becomes almost inevitable.
I like it. Okay, this whole idea of deterministic luck is really resonating with me. But there's one more thing I'm curious about when it comes to Naval's, approach to wealth building. Why is patience so important to him? He talks about it a lot.
He does. He's a huge advocate for patience. Naval really believes that building wealth, especially the sustainable kind we've been talking about, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about embracing that long game, being patient, and not getting, sidetracked by that desire for instant gratification.
So no magic formulas, no shortcuts to overnight riches.
None whatsoever. He believes that anyone promising you those things is, well, probably trying to sell you something. True wealth, real wealth, it's built gradually through smart decisions, consistent effort, and a willingness to let your investments, and that includes both financial and the relationships we talked about, to let them compound over time.
It's about trusting the process, knowing that if you stay the course, focus on your own growth, and remain patient, the results will come.
Absolutely. He talks about how impatience leads to poor decisions, short-term thinking, and that ultimately sabotages your long-term progress. Naval's all about being impatient with actions, taking those steps, putting in the work, but patient with results. Understanding that real, lasting success, it takes time.
That's a powerful message, especially in today's world where everything seems to happen so fast. Okay, so we've unpacked Naval's whole philosophy on, building wealth, finding that specific knowledge, stepping into that accountability, and then leveraging those skills. But it's not just about stacking up those dollars, is it? It's about what that wealth allows us to do, the freedom, the fulfillment it brings. Am I right?
You hit the nail on the head. It's about designing a life you love. And that's where his insights on happiness come in. But don't expect, those typical cliche self-help platitudes. Naval's a different breed, trust me. His perspective is way more practical and, dare I say, a bit counterintuitive.
Oh, I love me some counterintuitive wisdom. So how does he actually define happiness? Is it about chasing those fleeting moments of pleasure, or is there like a deeper, more sustainable approach we should be aiming for?
He's not about those quick fixes or empty affirmations, that's for sure. No, Naval sees happiness as a skill, something you cultivate and build, kind of like, mental fitness.
Happiness is a skill. Okay, that's a good one. I like that. So instead of chasing after happiness, we should be training for it. All right, I'm game. What's the workout routine look like?
It all starts with a simple shift, but trust me, it's profound. You ready for this? Eliminate the word should from your vocabulary.
Ditch the shoulds. Oh man, I'm so guilty of that. I should go to the gym more. I should call my mother more often. I should be a better podcast host. You know how it is. But seriously, how does letting go of those shoulds actually lead to, well, being happier?
It's about breaking free, you see. Free from the tyranny of expectations. All those societal pressures, the self-imposed obligations that just weigh us down. They keep us from really living authentically.
It's like we're stuck on this treadmill of shoulds, always striving for some external standard of success or happiness that someone else set. We forget to listen to, our own inner compass.
Exactly. And that constant pressure to conform, to meet those often arbitrary expectations, leads to anxiety, resentment. You lose that connection with your true self.
So by ditching the shoulds, we can finally figure out what truly matters to us, what actually brings us joy and fulfillment.
Now you're getting it. It's about aligning your actions with your values, not with some arbitrary list of what you think you should be doing.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to recognize those shoulds, right? But how do you actually let them go? Any practical tips for breaking free from, their evil clutches?
Well, Naval's a big proponent of mindfulness, cultivating the ability to be present right here, right now, not dwelling on the past or, worrying about the future, just being.
Easier said than done, my friend. Our minds are like those old pinball machines, thoughts just bouncing around nonstop. How do you quiet the noise and find that sense of peace in the present moment?
But look, it's a practice, not a destination. You're not going to achieve perfect stillness overnight, but by just becoming aware of those racing thoughts, just observing them without judgment, you start to create space between yourself and, well, and that mental chatter.
So it's not about like emptying our minds completely. That seems kind of impossible, honestly. But it's more about changing how we relate to our thoughts. So instead of getting swept away by every little thought, we can learn to observe it, detach from it, maybe even just let it float on by.
Now you're getting it. And in that space between thoughts, that's where you find peace, clarity, a deeper connection to yourself in this present moment.
I can see that. But let's be real. Life isn't all meditation cushions and tranquil moments, you know what I'm saying? We all face challenges, setbacks, things we just can't control. How does Naval's philosophy deal with those inevitable bumps in the road?
He's a realist. He knows we can't always change our circumstances, but we can change how we respond to them. He's got this really simple but powerful framework. When you're facing a difficult situation, you can try to change it, you can accept it, or you can leave it.
Okay, I like that. Simple and straightforward. But what if none of those options seem, particularly appealing at the time? What if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place?
That's where the real work begins. It's about recognizing when you're resisting reality, when you're stuck just wishing things were different, but not actually taking any action.
So instead of complaining or, daydreaming about how things should be, you make a conscious choice, even if it's hard.
That's it. You choose. Do you try to change the situation? Do you accept it and find a way to be okay with it? Or do you walk away? You're taking ownership of your response. It's empowering.
It's about action, not reaction.
Hmm.
Especially when things get tough. I can get behind that. But we're not just talking about ourselves in a vacuum here, right? Naval also talks about our social circles and how they impact us.
Oh, he does. He's big on the impact our relationships have on, well, our well-being. He often talks about the 5 chimps theory. Have you heard of this?
5 chimps. Lay it on me.
Okay, so the theory goes that you can actually predict a chimp's behavior just by observing the 5 chimps it spends the most time with.
So you're saying, what? We're just like chimps. Our social circles shape our behavior and ultimately our happiness.
Yeah.
Okay, this whole 5 chimps thing is making me rethink who I hang out with.
It's a good analogy. And while we're obviously a bit more complex than chimps, the principle holds true. The people we surround ourselves with, they influence our thoughts, our emotions, our whole outlook on life. It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
It's like you're choosing your own personal board of advisors. Are they lifting you up, encouraging your growth, reflecting your values? Or are they, the opposite, dragging you down with negativity?
Exactly. It's not about being judgmental or abandoning friends who are going through a rough patch. Not at all. It's about being mindful of the company you keep. Prioritize those relationships that are mutually supportive, the ones that feel good and make you a better person.
Create that positive and supportive ecosystem for yourself. Surround yourself with those who inspire you, challenge you to be better.
Exactly. It goes back to his point about playing the long game, but with people. Authentic relationships, those built on shared values and a commitment to growth, that's powerful. It creates a support system for both happiness and success.
Okay, I'm seeing the through line here. Ditch the shoulds, be present, choose your circle wisely. But there's one last piece of Naval's happiness puzzle I'm curious about. His view on freedom.
Yeah.
He's got this interesting distinction between freedom to and freedom from. What's that all about?
It's a subtle but really important distinction. Most people, they think of freedom as freedom to, right? The freedom to do what they want when they want, no constraints. But Naval, he suggests that true freedom, real freedom, it runs deeper. He calls it freedom from. Freedom from all those internal constraints, things like anger, fear, and all those limiting beliefs we carry around.
So it's not about having unlimited choices or material possessions. It's about liberating yourself from the chains inside that are actually keeping you from experiencing real happiness and fulfillment.
You nailed it. He talks about how earlier in his life he used to think freedom was all about having the means to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Classic, right? But as he matured, so did his definition of freedom.
What does freedom look like for him now?
Now, he seeks freedom from reaction, those knee-jerk emotional responses that often just lead to more suffering. Freedom from that constant chatter of the monkey mind, those negative thought patterns that keep us stuck. He sees this inner freedom, this freedom from within, as the key to experiencing true, lasting happiness and peace.
That's a powerful concept. It's not about controlling the external world, but mastering what's going on inside. But how do you actually cultivate that? It sounds like a lifelong pursuit.
It is a journey, that's for sure. And Nabal, he believes that practices like meditation, mindfulness, self-reflection, those are the tools that help quiet the mind. You become aware of those thoughts, those emotions, and you eventually gain a sense of mastery over your internal world.
Building that resilience, that sense of being grounded, you're not constantly reacting to every little thing or getting swept away by your emotions. But it's not about suppressing your emotions.
Right. It's not about pretending you don't have feelings. It's about creating that space, that space between the stimulus and your response. You get to choose how you show up.
So we're building happiness
Yeah.
by letting go of the shoulds, being present, choosing our circle, and seeking that freedom from within.
Got it. But how does this all tie back to Naval's thoughts on wealth? Are they connected or are these totally separate things?
He doesn't see them as mutually exclusive. Actually, he believes that building wealth the right way can lead to more freedom and happiness, but not in the way you might think. It's not about just amassing riches for the sake of it.
So it's not about the money itself. Right. It's about what that financial security gives you the power to do. When you're not constantly stressed about money, when you have control of your time and your resources, then you can finally pursue your passions. You can spend time with loved ones, contribute to causes you care about. You have the freedom to choose.
Wealth, in Naval's view, isn't the end goal. It's just a means to an end.
Exactly. It's about creating the conditions for a life of freedom, of purpose, of happiness. And it's not about becoming a billionaire. It's about reaching a level of financial stability where money is no longer the source of anxiety. Then you can free up your mental and emotional energy to focus on what truly matters.
That's a great point to end on, don't you think? This is all incredibly insightful. We've covered Naval's views on happiness, from ditching those shoulds and finding that inner peace to the importance of your social circle and that freedom from within. It's clear his definition of happiness is, well, it's bigger than just chasing those fleeting moments of pleasure, right? It's about intentionally creating a life of meaning, real inner richness. But I have a feeling he doesn't stop there. He seems like the kind of guy who ponders the really big questions too, like the meaning of life itself. What do you think?
Oh, you're definitely right about that. He goes there. But in typical Naval fashion, he doesn't offer those easy answers. In the book, he actually presents three distinct perspectives on the meaning of life thing. And, he acknowledges how complex and personal that whole question really is.
Three different perspectives. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What's the first one?
So first, he acknowledges that searching for meaning, it's a deeply personal journey. He actually says that any external answer, whether it comes from a book, a guru, even, Naval himself, it's not going to be enough. Ultimately, you have to find what resonates with you, what fits your own experiences and your own values.
So it's not about finding the quote-unquote right answer, but more about actually going through the process of searching.
Exactly. He says that the very act of asking those big questions, of really wrestling with, all of life's complexities, it's just as important as any answer you might stumble upon along the way. It's about self-discovery, figuring out what truly gives your life purpose and direction, what it's all about for you.
I like that. It's definitely a more proactive approach than just passively waiting around for the meaning of life to, magically reveal itself. But you said he offers three perspectives, right? So what's the next one?
The second one, it's a bit more, how should I put it, bracing. He suggests that, well, there might not actually be any inherent meaning to life at all.
Whoa, okay, now we're getting existential. So is he saying we're all just cosmic dust and our lives are ultimately, well, meaningless? That's a bit bleak, don't you think?
He's definitely not shying away from the, let's just say, the vastness of the universe and the fact that our existence is, pretty fleeting. But even within that seemingly bleak perspective, he finds a glimmer of hope.
Okay, well, now I have to know more. Tell me more.
So Nable's argument is that, look, if there's no inherent meaning baked in, well, then we have this incredible opportunity to create our own meaning. It's powerful stuff. We don't
Yeah.
have to be bound by some, predetermined cosmic script.
We have the freedom to choose what matters to us, to define our own purpose, even if ultimately it is all, technically meaningless in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It's liberating. It's about embracing that freedom, but also the responsibility that comes with it. Our individual lives might be fleeting, sure, but we still have the power to make choices, to love, to create something new, to have a positive impact on the world around us.
It's like we each get to write our own story, even if it is just a chapter in a much, much larger book.
That's a great way to put it. It's taking what could be a disheartening concept and turning it into something empowering, something we can actually do something with. I like that a lot. But you said there was a third perspective on the meaning of life, right? What's his final take?
This is where it gets a little more complex, for sure. He actually draws on scientific principles for this one specifically, this concept of entropy. You familiar with that?
Entropy. Refresh my memory.
So entropy, it's basically like a measure of disorder in a system.
Yeah.
And the laws of physics, they tell us that entropy is always increasing. So the universe, in a way, is constantly moving towards a state of greater and greater disorder.
Everything's falling apart. Got it. Depressing, but got it. Well, in a way, yes. But here's the really fascinating part. Living systems, us, plants, you name it, even entire civilizations, we locally reverse entropy, at least for a while. We create order, we build structures, we form these really complex systems where like these little pockets of resistance against this, this tide of universal chaos.
Fighting the good fight,
Yeah.
even if it's a losing battle.
Right. It's more like we're participating in this grand cosmic dance. This back and forth between order and chaos. And Nabel suggests that maybe, just maybe, our role in all of this is to create those pockets of order, to inject complexity and beauty into a universe that would otherwise just be, well, chaos.
Wow. It makes you think about your impact on a larger scale, doesn't it? Even if our individual lives are finite, we might be contributing to something way, way bigger than ourselves.
That's the idea. Now, he's not saying that this is the definitive answer to the meaning of life, but it's definitely a perspective that makes you think about our place in the grand scheme of things. But ultimately, he really encourages us to just engage with these questions, explore different viewpoints and figure out what feels true for you.
3 perspectives, each one a different lens to look at life's big questions too. He's not giving us a one-size-fits-all answer, but he's encouraging that, well, personal exploration, which I appreciate. But his philosophical insights, they go beyond just the meaning of life, don't they? He also talks about how important it is to, to really know your values.
Totally. He believes that aligning your life with those values, what you stand for, it's essential, not just for happiness, but for success in every area of your life. And, he says, finding your people, the ones who share those values, it's critical, both in your personal life and your work.
So it's not just knowing what you value, but it's about surrounding yourself with those who get it.
Yeah.
The people who share those core principles.
Yeah. When you have those shared values, it's like this foundation of trust and understanding. Conflicts become easier to navigate. You can collaborate more effectively because you're all on the same page from the start.
Speaking the same language, working towards a common goal. But figuring out what your values actually are, that can be a journey in itself.
He doesn't really give a step-by-step guide for that, but he does share some of his core values, the ones he lives by. Honesty, authenticity, integrity, those are big ones for him. He also talks about, treating everyone as peers, really fostering collaboration over hierarchy. And he's a big advocate for nonviolence because he sees anger and aggression as ultimately destructive forces.
Sounds like he's created a pretty solid set of guiding principles that help him, move through the world with intention.
That's a good way to put it. And he encourages all of us to do the same time, figure out our values, be clear about what matters most to us, and then make choices that actually reflect those values, even when it's tough, even when it would be easier to go the other way.
It's about living with intention, with integrity, and making choices based not on what's easy or convenient in the moment, but on what truly resonates with our deepest values.
We've covered so much ground here. Wealth, happiness, the meaning of life, these core values. Is there a common thread, you think? Something that runs through all of Naval's ideas, a core principle that ties everything together?
I think there is. He draws inspiration from all over, ancient philosophy, evolutionary biology, you name it. But there's this underlying emphasis on self-reliance that I think is central to his whole philosophy.
Self-reliance. Tell me more. It's about taking ownership. owning your life, your choices, your happiness. It's about building your judgment, cultivating inner peace, that freedom from within we were talking about, and doing all of that regardless of what's happening around you. Naval empowers you to be the architect of your own life.
It's about writing the story you want to live, not letting external factors write it for you. That's
Mhm.
powerful. And, I think it resonates with this deep desire we all have to live a life of meaning, a life of purpose.
100%. It's about recognizing that you have more agency than you think. You can choose how you respond to challenges, who you let into your life, what you focus your energy on. You have the power.
This deep dive has been incredible. Naval's insights are seriously thought-provoking, but they're also really actionable. And it's not about following some rigid set of rules. It's about asking the important questions, challenging conventional wisdom, and then, designing a life that truly aligns with your own definition of success, your own version of happiness.
He's all about empowering people, giving them the tools to carve their own path. He doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he provides a really valuable framework for thinking, for questioning, and for never ever stopping learning and growing.
He's like that friend who's always pushing you to think differently, to question your assumptions, and ultimately to level up your life in a way that feels real, authentic, meaningful. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. I don't know about you.
That's what Naval does best, right? He sparks that curiosity, challenges assumptions, and inspires people to take action.
Well said. And on that note, a huge thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the wisdom of Naval Ravikant. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep designing the life you want to live.